Day 512 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off with the stats as always, as Russia has just hit a milestone of 240,000 military personnel losses since their full-scale invasion into Ukraine just last year. Then as for hardware losses on the Russian side, so we're looking at 6 tanks, 6 APVs, a whopping 19 artillery, and 3 air defense systems, as Russia continues to essentially demilitarize themselves. Take this photo, for instance. It's a before and after for a recent satellite image of dwindling supplies of Russian BMP-1s at a storage location. So that's not even BMP-2s or BMP-3s or even the much vaunted BMP-Ts or BMP Terminators, which were meant to be indestructible behemoths that Russia only ever ended up fielding a few of them, and all of which we saw were then terminated. So moving across to the map today, and we'll start out briefly in the north, as Russia has been really actively seeking to push westerly near Kupiansk. So I'll zoom right in there, which is a potentially pretty useless move, considering they'll come up against the Oskil River, which they've had a lot of issues crossing in the past, and then just beyond the river, so we'll zoom in and you can see the Ukrainian positions squarely on higher grounds. And so maybe it's just the Russian MOD ordering troops to make some gains somewhere, anywhere. Then moving a bit more south, so a Ukrainian JDAM strike made a successful hit on a Russian base in Soledar. Multiple vehicles were destroyed in the process as well. Then we'll move down to the Bakhmut region, as there's certainly been the continued incremental gains on several fronts here for the AFU. And so the first is northwest of Bakhmut, as Ukraine continues to chip away at Russian positions east of Orakovo, Vasilivka, and as such improved their tactical positions in the process. Also, some small pushes by the AFU in Berkivka as they extended the grey zone into their favour. Then as for Klishchivka, well, it's all high ground positions awarded to Ukrainian forces pretty much in this sector after recent pushes. And I don't know where Kadyrov and his Chechen forces are to save the day for the Russian army in these locations. He's probably wasting time making another TikTok video as per usual, or maybe even swiping right on some dating apps instead. Then moving down a bit further south to Avdiivka, there was a Russian storm attack near Krasnohorivka that failed quite horribly, as at least 5 Russian tanks and 4 APVs got destroyed by a combination of Ukrainian artillery and ATGMs, so the anti-tank guided missiles. And so this failed assault gave me a lot of Volodar vibes from the past, a place you may remember, which failed on Russian attack after Russian attack over the space of about 1 or 2 months from just earlier this year. A veritable scrap metal graveyard. As much can be said about this most recent assault here as well in Avdiivka. Then sliding just a bit further down again, there was a big hit on a metallurgical plant in occupied Mariupol, likely from a Ukrainian strike, and the overarching point here would be that nowhere is safe for this continuously demoralized Russian army, given the Ukrainian strike range and precision capabilities that they now have at their disposal. Then we'll move across a bit and go back to Zap, or Zaporizhia. Not a lot of updates for today specifically, although in my absence there was some small gains made by the AFU just south of Orikhiv and in the east as well, as it touches into the Donbas territory. Although most recently we've heard that the occupiers in the region were whinging about a Ukrainian strike on a TV tower in occupied Tokmak, which I would consider hands down a win in terms of the loss or suppression of Russian propaganda in the region, because you just know in any occupied region, Russia has well and truly taken over control of the media airwaves to try and cram some pretty ghastly false narratives down the throats of the civilians in the region, such as how the locals are Russian and not Ukrainian, which is against countless international laws for a wide variety of reasons. And so then to add a little bit of context for successes in this region overall, as Ukraine has liberated more territory in a single month than Russia has captured in a year. And although an MI6 chief said very recently something to that effect, we don't need to wait for their word on it, as we can well and truly see what's happening on the map on any given day anyway. Then we'll head on right down south as Ukraine's campaign to degrade ammunition supplies continues, this time at the Kurovska district in Crimea. So Russian-occupied Crimea right there. And this eruption was popping off for quite some time as well, being perhaps quite a sizable ammo dump. Then, as for the Kerch Bridge, hit about 3 days ago now, the damage turned out to be greater than we initially thought, with both driveways out of order. And the top-down view of which also goes to show the explosion or impact very likely came from underneath the bridge instead. So the general consensus so far is that Ukrainian naval drones were behind the latest attack on the Kerch Bridge. And with this bridge being the important logistical route for the Russian forces that it is, the cost to fix, well, repair costs are estimated at about $100 million US or more thus far, and the length of time to restore, we're probably looking at several months at this point. But the thing is, Russia was, or should have been, already expecting this attack. They even advertised their multifaceted approach about 6 months ago to protecting the bridge from future Ukrainian strikes, which included, drumroll, battle dolphins. So where were the battle dolphins when the defenses were exploited? They probably swam to and joined the Ukrainian side as the empathetic creatures that they truly are. Meanwhile, late-night Russian state media TV is lamenting the hit, pondering what to do next. They sought to blame other countries, they also blamed Ukraine, they even suggested blaming the bridge engineers themselves. Anybody but themselves, basically. They also played down the repair times, saying at least a month, which likely means several months. But does any of that matter? Nope, because it will just get struck again. And it won't take 9 months this time, which is the length of time between the first and the second strike just the other day on the 17th of July. Then we'll head over just briefly to the Black Sea as the Russian Black Sea Fleet announced the discovery of naval mines in the area. Okay, but they did turn the sea into a partial war zone. Not to mention the naval mine that they found was probably one of their own anyway that they indiscriminately deployed months ago. Then we'll head across to some news for today. So the US announced a new defense package for Ukraine, and of particular note, it includes 4 NASAMS air defense systems and a bunch of mine clearing equipment, and not to mention additional sustainment munitions as well. Then in some other news, there's been some developments in the grain deal between Russia and Ukraine, as Russia has decided to pull out of the grain deal now, as they seek to weaponize food security, which largely goes to Africa, which ironically includes a handful of African countries that are normally somewhat receptive to Russia's aggression in Ukraine. But then, one day after Russia pulled out of the grain deal, it struck a silo of 60,000 tons of grain in Odessa just the following day. So then Zelensky, Ukrainian President Zelensky, took to social media saying, oh, by the way, the grain silo that you destroyed was destined for China. A nation, by the way, who is a partial ally of Russia's throughout this war. So you'll actually notice there, perhaps, on both accounts, Putin appears to be shooting himself in the foot regarding his ally nations. Oh, what a tangled web he weaves. And so the implications of Russia withdrawing from the grain deal are such that Russia will consider any ships that go to and fro Ukrainian ports to now be potential carriers of military cargo. And also that any international vessels carrying their own flags to and from the Ukrainian ports are then considered to be involved in the war, which is quite escalatory to say the least. But then I remembered Russia does talk a big game, which ended up making all of their 17 nuclear threats seem pretty baseless after a while. So let's see what happens in the immediate or upcoming future. For instance, if Turkey should seek to escort Ukrainian grain ships or other countries' flagged grain ships in and out of the Black Sea. Then I'll go to a funny and round it all off with today, guys. So in Stavropol Krai of southern Russia, they used a Spanish Leopard 2A6E tank variant for their army propaganda poster and recruiting ad. My God, they are just so incredibly smart. I mean, surely that's not an oversight. Surely. And in the very least, it's a very mixed message because the question up the top in Russian simply asks, "Are you with us?" So are the Russian citizens with the army that deploys the Leopard tanks? What? I don't even know what to say. But of course, if Russia used their own tanks, what they've got available for the war right now on the poster, no one would join. And I'm going to say my personal favorite line here again, that being, it's not even the first time that they've done something like this. As Russia had previously used a US carrier on a Navy Day poster. Ah, Russian propagandists. Nothing but class, that lot. Okay, so that will have to be it for today, guys, which is unfortunate because I've actually got a lot of extra funnies to show you, which I'll undoubtedly get to tomorrow. So thanks again for watching, because watching the show really helps to spread the word about one of the key messages here, which is that aggressive and corrupt and selfish countries are only hurting themselves and making complete and utter fools out of themselves on the world stage, which no other country in the world would ever seek to follow in the footsteps of. So thanks again, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.